Good morning, Starshine. The Earth says hello. My dog and my cat are in the background of this video. Oh, there goes the dog. Can you hear her little paws click clack? I can't show her to you anymore because she's over there now. But I can show you my cat. She's on that rocking chair there. Morgan! Morgan! Yeah, that's Morgan. Zany! Zany, wanna come here and be on camera? Zane, Zane! Zane, Zane! There's my good girl. Here's my good girl. Here's my Zany. She makes sounds like a pig sometimes. So, those are my pets. If you hear background noise, blame them. It's them. Because there is nothing else up here. I'm at my parents' place for reading week because I have no school, so I can come back here. And look at it. Look at, out the window? It's 20 minutes past nowhere, my friends call it. I live on a farm. I'm the 5th generation to have lived on this farm. It's not actively farmed at the moment because a frickin' cougar that the government isn't admitting exists ate all our chickens. Your invisible cougar ate our chickens, government. And that is where I am. And since I'm up here, and since I got some interest, I got some feedback, I'm going to tell the story of how I was arrested today. And just in case my mother's fears are grounded, and you're an employer who Googled my name watching this, know that the charges were dropped, and it was decided I did nothing wrong. But I was still arrested, and it's still an interesting story, so I'm going to tell it. So it starts when I was 14 years old, and when I was 14 years old, I lived in Kingston. This isn't Kingston, this is a little town called, I'm not going to tell you where I live. Do you think I was going to tell you where I live? But I lived in Kingston for a few years when I was 14, and they're a prison city. Lots of prisons in Kingston. And one of them, I think a few of them actually, was the prison farms. It was a rehabilitation program where inmates would look after animals and farm the land. And it worked fairly well. During the process of my involvement, I was able to talk to a few inmates, and they talked about how seeing the mother cows with their calves really helped them understand and practice empathy. So why I got involved is the Harper government, which is no longer in power but was in power for 8 years, decided that they wanted to shut down the prison farms. They didn't have any replacement programs. The prison farms were a cost-effective, all-round effective program that allowed the prisons to mostly supply for themselves as well. They had their own beef and eggs and corn and stuff from the farming efforts. But Harper wanted to shut it down, mostly because he was trying to adopt the massive prisons that America has, like prisons as a business. So he wanted there to be a high recidivism rate because he wanted there to be a lot of people in prisons if they were going to be a business. I thought that that was really, really wrong. Not only because the prison farms worked, and don't try to fix something that's not broken. Don't try to throw out something that's not broken. There's that, and there's also, I grew up a farmer. We don't have any animals now, but we've had chickens most of my life. And for a while we had cows too. I can remember helping birth calves when I was a child. I've been a farmer most of my life, and farming is a very undervalued trade. And that doesn't seem right to me. Shutting down of the prison farms is a symptom of that. And so when protests started happening surrounding the prison farms, I was involved with that heavily. I took petitions to my school and had the other kids sign them. I marched with them. I did a whole bunch of things, as much as I could, to protest this and try and get the shutdown repealed. They wouldn't have to close. But it ended up failing. The Harper government didn't listen to not just me, but so many other people in Kingston. I think that the majority of people in Kingston felt this way, that it shouldn't be shut down. I don't think the rest of the people in the rest of Canada knew what was going on, but Kingston was very invested in it. And so it came to the day when trucks were going to be coming in to take away the cows, load the cows, and take them away. They were actually disbanding the farm and removing the livestock. And at that point, all like political roads had obviously failed. And so at that point, we were willing to be a little bit more dramatic. And so what we did was we blockaded the road into the prison farm so that the trucks couldn't get through and wouldn't be able to take the cows away. And I was part of that. Me and my whole family, like I'm an only child, but me and both of my parents went to this protest, and me and my mother were in the front of the blockade. My father was off to the side because if we got arrested, someone needed to go home and look after the animals. At that point, we did still have animals, and someone had to look after them. So Dad wasn't going to be part of the blockade. And I don't know who called the cops. Maybe the people from the prison, maybe the drivers. I don't know, someone called the police. And they were the Kingston police, so they were fairly sympathetic to us because, as I said, most people in Kingston supported the protesters. But they did have to do their job, and we were disturbing the peace, was the charge, because we were shouting and blocking traffic. And so they came in and started picking random people out of the crowd and arresting them, hoping that it would scare away some people as well, and they would be able to clear it out. But it didn't work because we were all very dedicated, but they did keep pulling people out, and they arrested a dozen or so people that day. And one of them was me. I think it might have been my hair that pulled them to me, and even though I was 14 at the time, I looked a lot older. I think that was the age that somebody guessed that I was 23. So you can't really blame the police for thinking that I was an adult and pulling me out of the protest. They obviously didn't know how young I actually was, because when they asked me how old I was and I told them I was 14, they looked quite alarmed, a little bit scared, that they were going to have to arrest a 14-year-old, and they actually told me, I think it was a woman who was arresting me, asked me if she let me go, did I have family outside of the protest that I could go to? And I said, yes, my father isn't part of the blockade, he's over there. And she was like, if I let you go, will you go to your father and just leave? And I said, no. I'm standing by this decision. I knew the risks. When I sat down in the middle of the street, I knew what might happen, but I don't have a political voice yet. I'm not old enough to vote, but I still have an opinion, and this is the way I can express this opinion that I feel very strongly about. So if you are going to arrest me for doing this, then arrest me, because I stand by this decision. I stand by the prison farms. And so she did arrest me. She didn't handcuff me because I was a minor. She used rope cuff weird things to secure my hands behind my back, and I went in the paddy wagon, which is what they call the big metal trucks that they bring to transport prisoners. Me and my mother and two other women were in this truck, and my mom was crying, and I was very proud of myself. And they drove us to the jail. I think it's the jail. That's what it's not a prison, but it's like a holding area before the prison-y thing. So they took us there. I think that's the jail. And they processed me the whole bit. They made me take off my sweater, went through my pockets, took my shoes, took my fingerprints, took my picture. So they all still have that in their system, I think. And then they put me in a cell. I was in a cell by myself. Some of the other people who were arrested in the process ended up in like big holding cells, but I was in a cell by myself. My mom was in a cell by herself as well. They separated us. And then I proceeded to annoy everybody by singing cheerful songs loudly, and then took a nap. I fell asleep, which was really, really uncomfortable because there's not like a bed. It's literally concrete. It's all concrete. So I took a nap on concrete. And then they let us out that evening or the next morning. I don't really remember because I was asleep. And my dad came to pick us up and brought sandwiches, which was very nice of him, because the only option that they had for the prisoners to eat in the jail thing was McDonald's and hamburgers at that. And I wasn't eating red meat. I still don't eat red meat. And so I couldn't have eaten that even if I wanted to eat McDonald's, which I didn't because it's greasy and it makes me feel sick. So I was very grateful that my dad brought sandwiches. And the next day was actually much worse. I didn't go to the protest the next day because part of our conditions of release was that we weren't allowed to go within a certain distance of the prison farm, so we couldn't go back to the protest. And I wanted to go back to the protest anyway, but my mom said that if we did go back to the protest and we got arrested for a second time, the consequences would be much worse because we violated our terms of release. So we didn't go back the second day, and that was actually a really, really good thing, because the second day they called in the OPP, the Ontario Provincial Police Force, and they were much, much more rough with the protesters and the arrests. Some people were actually kind of injured, and they arrested far more people and did actually manage to disband protest and brought in the trucks and took the cows away, which was very, very sad. It felt like a very big loss for the community. And after that, I did some public speaking about being politically active as a person too young to vote as a minor, and we've all tried to get as much interest in the prison farm as we could, and a lot of the farmers who were part of the protest bought the cows from the prison farm when they went up for auction, so that when the prison farms were reinstated, which we were very hopeful that they would be, the cows would be right there, and we would give them back to the prison farms. We managed to get quite a lot of interest. We got the interest of actually Margaret Atwood, who's one of Canada's most famous authors, and she didn't come to my court date herself. I did have to go to court for being arrested. I pled not guilty so that I could go back to high school, but a representative of Margaret Atwood came to my court date and gave me a signed copy of her book, The Handmaid's Tale, and I have a letter that she wrote for me congratulating me on my political activism and telling me that she was very impressed by what I did, which was very nice. And then I proceeded to not read this book for years until very recently, which I should have read it earlier. It's a good book. But it does sort of have a happy ending, because we managed to get so much interest in the prison farms going that all of the other governments, besides the Conservatives, which was Harper's branch of government, all of the other ones agreed that if they were voted in, they would reinstate the prison farms. And in this election, the Liberals have won, and they said that they would reinstate the prison farms, and they're actually already taking some steps to reinstate the prison farms, and we're all very excited. And the cows are healthy. Some of the cows have had babies, so there's actually going to be more cows going back to the prison farms than there were that left, because they've bred now. So it is kind of a happy ending, and I'm still very, very proud of what I did, and I would not change it for the world. I am a politically active person. I still am. Now that I'm old enough to vote, I never miss a vote. And sometimes when you're not getting your voice heard, you have to do more extreme things to get your voice heard, and that is a good thing. That's why peaceful protest is a right. People need to be able to express themselves and their opinions, and that's why I'm kind of against the voting age as well, because when I was 13 and 14, I had a political opinion, and I had things to say, and I had informed decision to do, but I wasn't allowed by law because I was too young, and that doesn't seem fair to me. And that's why I got arrested, was because I couldn't get my voice heard any other way. I couldn't impact the political system any other way. And I'm very proud of that. My parents were very proud of me for doing that. Let's be clear here. You won't find anything about me if you Google my name. You might find an article that was written about me. You might find an interview that I did for the radio about this, and you may also find a documentary, because there was a documentary made about the prison farms just recently, but my name won't be in any of them because I was underage at the time, and of course they had to change my name. They can't publish the names of minors arrested. So even though I'm very proud of it, and I would have had my name published, having my name published was just another thing that I couldn't do because I was a minor. So that is the story of how I was arrested. Maybe it's not what you were expecting. Maybe you're expecting shoplifting or something like that, but I've never stolen anything besides that one time. I've never broken a law besides doing some parkour on public buildings, which you're not really supposed to climb, but that's its own thing. And I hope that that clears some things up. I hope it was an interesting story, and I will see you all later. You all keep being stars. I'll see you later, Starshine.